The Secret of Sugarbush Hollow. Justin, are you daydreaming again? Justin gave a start of surprise. Unfortunately, he was leaning back in his chair, which crashed to the floor, landing the boy flat on his back. Miss Nannyberry tapped her ruler in the palm of her hand. As I was saying, there are three main types of trees: broadleaves, conifers, and palms. Some broadleaf trees lose their leaves in late autumn. These are called deciduous trees. Justin, said the teacher, would you care to name some deciduous trees? Well, Justin said, I think I would name one blackjack oak, and let me see, hornbeam maple's a good name, and how about— Hornbeam maple indeed, interrupted Miss Nannyberry. We will proceed. Conifers are so named because their seeds are made in cones instead of flowers. These trees are evergreen, which means that they don't shed all their leaves in the fall. Old Mr. Wise Owl flapped his wings. Did I or did I not state that the wind would sweep through the valley at precisely 4:02 p.m.? Wise Owl licked one sharp claw, then raised it in the air. By my expert calculations, highly intelligent reasoning, and so on and so forth, it's precisely 4:01 and 33 seconds. I suggest we prepare for pollination at once. Oh, fiddlesticks, snapped Hornbeam Maple. Who gives a fig about pollination? That wind is going to whip through here and rip the leaves right off my poor branches. 20 seconds, said Wise Owl. Stop that, said Mr. Hornbeam Maple irritably. My leaves are turning brown before their time, and all you care about is pollination. Stomping Jack Rabbit peered at everyone from his home in Hornbeam Maple's trunk and asked, What's wrong with Hornbeam? White-tailed Deer walked to the base of Hornbeam Maple's trunk and gazed up at his old friend. When had Hornbeam's leaves started to turn brown? And why were they turning brown in the spring when the leaves of all the other trees were green? Who knows how seeds are produced? Miss Nannyberry asked. Justin's arm shot straight up. I do. In the spring, pollen is carried from the male parts of trees to the female parts. When the pollen sticks to the female parts, a seed is made. Correct, said the teacher with a smile. Some trees, such as deciduous trees, have flowers, while others, such as evergreens, bear cones. Trees that don't have flowers have flower-like parts instead, and depend on the wind to carry the pollen. The wind suddenly whipped into Sugarbush Hollow, and on invisible wings carried the pollen from flower to flower, from cone to cone. All of a sudden, Connie Fur let out a horrible scream. The sky, she cried. Look at the sky. A heavy silence fell over the inhabitants of Sugarbush Hollow. One by one, they raised their eyes to the sky. No one dared to move or speak. Minutes ticked slowly by. The air became as thick and heavy as the silence that blanketed the valley. Then they heard the first low rumble. The second rumble was louder, deeper than the first, closer. But it was the third rumble that made the trees and animals quiver in terror, for it was accompanied by a churning black clouds that rolled across the sky, turning daylight into pitch-black darkness. Hornbeam Maple stared at the sky, and sap filled his eyes and ran slowly down his ancient trunk. Old Mr. Wise Owl blinked his big round eyes over and over again as if to make the angry clouds disappear. The clouds did not disappear. They came closer and closer and soon covered Sugarbush Hollow. A burst of lightning shot across the sky, then darkness fell once again. A few seconds later, a clap of thunder shook the ground. Wise Owl raised one pointed claw into the wind. His body shook uncontrollably. The thunder and lightning were 3 seconds apart, the owl stuttered. The storm is 3 miles away, moving in fast. Take cover. Jack Rabbit needed no further encouragement. He darted across the glade and scampered into his hole in Hornbeam Maple's trunk. He burrowed in as deep as he could and covered his eyes with his front paws. Blue Jay, Red Cardinal, and Wise Owl flew into the air, and soon they too huddled amongst the maple's branches. No, cried Hornbeam, get away from me, all of you. You can't stay here. Is there something outside the window that the rest of the class should be aware of? Asked Mrs. Nanny Berry. I was just looking at the sky, Justin said. Well, as it happens, it's the sky we will talk about next. The air, to be more precise. While trees are busy making food, they also produce oxygen, which all living things, including you and I, need to breathe. Not only that, but trees clean and filter the air as well. Who? Really, Hornbeam, this is no time to hold a grudge, said Wise Owl. We need shelter from the storm, and you're the oldest, sturdiest tree here. No, I'm not, cried the maple. Get away, go. When the animals made no move to leave, Hornbeam began to shake and sway, rocking his branches until one by one they were forced to go. All the while sap poured from the old maple's eyes and trickled down his trunk. Stomping Jack Rabbit stayed in his hole with his front and back paws pressed against the walls of his shelter. Suddenly his paws smashed through one wall, and bits of rotted wood rained down upon his head. Not just any wood, but bits of his friend Hornbeam Maple. Jack Rabbit scurried out of his hiding place. He had to get help for his friend fast. Thunder rolled in the sky, followed immediately by a crack of lightning. The air sizzled with electricity. Then in less than a heartbeat, thunder boomed overhead. The rabbit froze, his heart catching in his throat. Shivering with fear, Stomping Jack Rabbit started forward once again. An instant later, his fear turned to terror. In the unusual darkness, the rabbit must have taken a wrong turn without realizing it. Now he stood at the brimming banks of Sugarbush Creek, which had turned into a raging river, its swollen muddy waters rushing downstream, sweeping away thick tree limbs and tender saplings. At first Jack Rabbit didn't hear the strange sound coming from upstream. He didn't hear the water that rolled like an ocean wave and spilled over the creek's banks, washing away everything in its path. It wasn't until the flash flood was upon him that Jack Rabbit heard the rushing water. He whirled toward the sound. His eyes bulged as he saw the wall of churning water coming straight toward him. Heart beating fast, the rabbit bounded forward, trying desperately to outrun the wave of muddy water. Stomping Jack screamed as the icy wave pulled his feet out from under him and carried him downstream. When the next bolt of lightning shot across the sky, it sent a fork of sizzling blue and white light straight down to Sugarbush Hollow. The booming thunder and earth-shaking crash were so loud that even the rabbit heard it over the sound of the roaring waves. Suddenly Jack Rabbit saw White-tailed Deer racing along the edge of the water. "Swim, Jack, swim!" White-tailed Deer raced ahead and climbed onto a tree trunk that had fallen over the creek. White-tailed Deer craned his long neck over the swollen creek. "I'm too high, I can't reach." "We'll hold you," said Wise Owl. The owl wrapped his claws around his tail. Blue Jay and Red Cardinal each grabbed one large antler in their beaks. "Hoo, here he comes, prepare to rescue." White-tailed Deer leaned down until his snout was only a few inches above the water. Then he raised his head. Between his teeth was a very wet but grinning rabbit. Whitetail set Stomping Jack Rabbit gently on the ground. Tears of relief trickled from the rabbit's eyes. "Thank you all," he said in a husky voice. "It's Hornbeam Maple you should thank," Whitetail said quietly. "Without his help we wouldn't have been able to reach you." The animals slowly turned their heads toward the fallen tree that leaned over the churning creek and which had played such an important role in the rabbit's rescue. Oh no, Hornbeam. Most healthy trees live for many years, but as with all living things, there comes a time when the tree begins to weaken. Then slowly the tree dies. But even after a tree dies, its goodness lives on, Miss Nannyberry said. All was quiet in Sugarbush Hollow. The friends moved closer to the fallen maple. He was struck by lightning, Wise Owl explained. White-tailed Deer reached down, grabbed one of Hornbeam Maple's branches between his teeth, and began to pull. Wise Owl watched him a moment, then he too grabbed a branch between his talons and began to help. Red Cardinal, Blue Jay, and Jack Rabbit all took hold of a branch, and they too began to pull. Soon animals from other parts of Sugarbush Hollow came to lend a hand. They pulled and they tugged and they tugged and they pulled until little by little Hornbeam Maple was dragged away from the creek and onto solid ground. Sir Douglas Fir cleared his throat. Our fallen friend, may you rest in peace. Miss Nannyberry smiled. Now you know why trees are so important. Class dismissed.